You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. I hope you all are well. I have a real treat for you this week. I had the opportunity to sit down with two-time Olympic swimmer Gabrielle Rose, who earlier this summer set the record for being the oldest semifinalist in U.S. Olympic swimming trials history at age 46. And she not only qualified, but she set a series of personal bests. She won her preliminary heat in the 100-meter breaststroke with a personal best time of 108.43. And if that wasn't fast enough, she bettered that time in the semifinals at 108.32. She also advanced to the women's 200-meter breaststroke semifinals by winning her preliminary heat with another personal best time of 2:30.13. She did not make it to the Olympics, but as you'll hear in this episode, it wasn't really the end game this time around. Rose has a history in the Olympics. She competed in the 1996 Games for Brazil. Then again, she competed for Team USA 4 years later at age 22. And as she was going into the push for the 204 Games, she got sick and she did not make the cut for that team. So she put her swimming dreams on the table until 20 years later. And we talk all about that swimming history, what led to her Olympic trials comeback, and how it has completely lit a fire for her future. I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. Okay, before we get to it, give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook at Feisty Menopause. Head on over to feistymenopause.com where you can sign up for my free weekly 40 plus newsletter. You can check out our Level Up membership, and you can check out our course, Navigate Menopause. We got all kinds of stuff there, as well as Dr. Carla DiGirolamo's workouts. Check it out, feistymenopause.com. And keep your eyes peeled for a special 4-part podcast concussion series that I'm doing on the Feisty Women's Performance feed. It is with my longtime friend, former teammate, and 7-time world champion athlete Rebecca Rush, who suffered a concussion going on 3 years ago now that has pretty much turned her world upside down. The series is called Brainstorm. It's presented by Memphis, and it's a journey. I hope you enjoy that. It was an honor to be able to bring her story, and it's really an important series because concussion is underappreciated and it affects a lot of people, and it affects a lot of people for a very long time. So check that out. It'll be dropping in September. Finally, quick thanks to Lagoon Sleep for their continued support. I love my cooling otter pillow for deep, sweet sleep. So thanks, Lagoon. And if you haven't already, check out the show notes. Take that 2-minute sleep quiz to find your perfect pillow too. Okay, enough of me. Let's have a few words about our awesome sponsors and get on with the show. Okay, Gabrielle, welcome to the show. As I mentioned before hitting record, you are a very requested guest, so I was very happy that you said yes.
Thank you so much, and thanks for those requests, and I am honored to be on the show today.
So we have lots to talk about, but really just sort of cutting to the chase to set the stage. You know, at the age of 46, you recently competed in the Olympic trials, literally 2 decades since the last Olympic trials, right? In 2004. And I am not a breaststroker. I have done a lot of Ironman open water swimming kind of thing, and you crushed it, hitting a personal best of in the 100-meter breaststroke of 108.43, which I personally think is blistering fast. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to hear your journey though. Like you missed making the mark, right, for the team in 2004. And then it sounds like you were like, okay, got into coaching, became a mom, swam in the Masters circuit. What sparked this desire to come back to the trials literally 20 years later? When you've already been to the Olympics, you've done it. You went 96 and 2000. So like where did this come from?
Yeah. This time around, it was never about making the Olympic team. Like I knew that wasn't going to happen. This time around, it was about seeing if I could do my personal best, seeing if I could rise to a big challenge. It had been several years, maybe decades, since I'd pushed myself to something so big. And I'd recently done something professionally that pushed me way out of my comfort zone, kind of forced me to use more than I thought I was capable, like do more than I thought I was capable of doing. And that was such a good feeling. And it kind of coincided with this other event that I had been training for. And so I went to US Masters Nationals in 2023. It was April. And I had been taking that seriously, training. I got back into weightlifting, and I just wanted to see where I was. And, another important part of this equation is just 2 years before that, I had started coaching teenage kids on a USA Swimming Club. They were really inspiring, and it forced me to think about swimming in a new way. So I went to Masters Nationals, and on the first day, I got a lifetime personal best in the 100-yard breaststroke. And so I don't know, any of our master swimmers, the mindset out there, it's like we're kind of joking, or it's kind of depressing how far off you become off of your personal best. But here at this meet, kind of 2 decades after my swimming career, I went a best time, totally not expecting that. So this was in a short course meter pool. I went a 101 something in the 100 breaststroke. And that really surprised me, and it felt really good. And it felt amazing to be in the conversation of even considering best times, even talking about that. But there was so that was a breakthrough to experience a personal best at that age. But there's also something very factual about it. That time in the short course pool converted to almost the Olympic trials standard in the 100 breaststroke. So Olympic trials weren't on my radar. Why would they be? But my coach, he couldn't help but explain to me, you're really close. We might as well try. The trials are next year. How cool would that be? And we were already planning to go and watch anyways. So he's like, what if you got on deck and got to swim? So kind of convinced me to get back at it. And I was excited again to have an even bigger goal. And I still didn't know if I could make it, but I thought, okay, we'll get to see what I'm capable of, what my personal best might be at this age.
So many questions. But you have been, I mean, it sounds so out of nowhere, but it can't be completely out of nowhere, right? You have been swimming, were you getting anywhere close to this, or were you just not competing that much? I
Yeah.
feel like there's some gaps I want filled in there.
It's not out of nowhere. So I retired as a professional athlete in 2004, right after I didn't make the trials there. And just to fill in the gaps there, I missed that spot I missed it by 2 spots. I was diagnosed with mono 3 weeks before the trials.
Wow.
So when I went to the games in 2000, I was a finalist, and I wanted to go back in 2004 and get that medal for the US. So it's a very rough ending to my career,
Yeah.
not on my terms. But it didn't kill my love of swimming and being in the water. And I stayed in the water for I couldn't help but be in the water. I feel there's something about it that's meditative, and I love how strong I feel and kind of graceful at times. So I stayed with Masters Swimming in LA. I moved to Chicago, had a Masters team, and those communities were really important for me. In Chicago, I did some competitions, but never, never even anywhere close. So I was in my 30s then, never anywhere close to my personal best. And yeah, I think I did a master's competition in 2017, back out here when I moved back to California. So I had been at it, but my preference was just to kind of stay in shape, and not work on technique, not compete. If I got to compete for a team and do relays, that was exciting for me. Sure, I jump in, but I was like, I've been there, done that. I don't need to push myself. something changed. In 2021, I broke both bones. I broke two bones in my body. I broke my elbow, my right elbow, no, my right foot and my left elbow. So I couldn't do anything. So I was sitting on my sofa,
Can I
like
ask
this is,
how?
oh, at the dog park, a corgi.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No.
This is one of the dark stretches of COVID where we thought it was like over this, like before the, the vaccine's about to come out, and like they shut us down in California again. And like, we were going to the dog park, and a corgi collided with me when I was
Oh
running,
no.
helping my dog get some exercise. Um, so yeah, I was on my sofa for several weeks and couldn't be in the water at all. And when I finally got back in the water, I was raring to go. And I got back to training, and I have to thank Jordan Rainey. She's about to compete for USA swimming, sorry, USA water polo.
Oh
Her
wow.
first Olympic games. She was actually cut right before the team went to Tokyo in 2021, and found her in this, like in my master's lane swimming. And I didn't realize that she'd been cut until I happened to read on my Apple News feed that this article by her. So she was in the water working her tail off, having gone through this hardship. And I'd been there before in 2004, not making the team. And I saw her working so hard. And so she and I became fast friends, and she really pushed me. Like I had to coach her, and I had to keep up with this really strong, fit woman. She was at her peak. She was at her prime. She thought she was going to Olympic Games. So that summer got back to training, and same thing with the fall. So that now we're at 2021. So yeah, Jordan pushed me to like discover a new level in myself. And I saw, I saw a woman in her 20s, like at her prime of being a professional athlete. And I remembered how good that felt. And I wasn't trying to be her. I had my
Right.
own professional endeavors, and I was a mom, but I loved helping her, and I loved kind of reconnecting with, it feels really, really good to take care of yourself like that and make health and fitness and your athletic dreams a priority.
And had you strength, you mentioned that you started strength training again. Had that been something you did previously and you just sort of let fall by the wayside, or is it something you picked up recently?
No, I mean, I, I weightlifted all through my swimming career,
Okay.
probably starting 12. So that's young. And then I love being in the weight room, but during COVID, so that's 2020, I stopped all weightlifting. So I got back in the weight room in the fall of 2022.
Gotcha. So what was it like when you walked in, to do the Olympic trials and you're like just amongst a sea of what I can only imagine are participants who are considerably younger than yourself? I mean, I raced semi-professional mountain bike racing in my, at 46, I was going all over. And I remember getting sort of second looks or, sort of side glances. I mean, were you self-conscious at all? Or were you just like, this is amazing? Like, what was it like?
Yeah, it was amazing to be there. And, I've been a coach now for 3 years. So part of me is just nerding out as a coach, like getting to be in this environment with all these icons of the sport, and nerding out as I guess a swim fan that, these people that I watch and admire, I get to be, in the same pool as. So, another thing about this journey is it kind of required that I cast aside my, any sense of age,
Yep.
right? My main training partners, the people where the ones that I had my hardest workouts with were teenagers, right? So just staying in the pool, keeping up with them, that kept me feeling young, and I couldn't be focused on poor me or like, oh, my aging body. Like I was in there racing and taking it seriously and pushing myself. So, by the time I got to trials, I think I'd worked through any self-conscious, and all the meets that I went to leading up to that were like I was swimming against like 14-year-old, 15-year-old girls would be like the common, the average age probably in my events. And then I'd have like some post-grad collegiate swimmers that I was happy to race against. But yeah, it was like mom and the girls
Wow.
racing. And so, yeah, I had a sense of humor about it, but I also just like how I was so lucky to be in that role. And sure. So yeah, there was some self-consciousness at trials. Like it was a weird thing feeling to realize like, oh my gosh, these people probably know who I am just because I'm the old, like I'm not the fastest, but that like just because I'm the old woman out there like stretching, right? So that was new to me, but quickly discarded. Like if that's just a distraction.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And did you know, like when you hit your personal best, did you feel it? Like were you like, oh yeah,
I
that was
mean,
fast.
yeah, I when I hit that wall, I felt like I'd done everything right. So that to me, what was important there was executing the race plan. Um, and before that, before I'd even gotten on the blocks, I felt like we'd put together a really well-crafted 9-month plan. Things had gone remarkably well. I was peaking in these different areas, like even I was going to PT and she kept on saying like, wow, you're getting better in this. And like in the weight room, the reps and things I would do. So everything and the times I was doing in the pool, everything was kind of peaking at the right times. And with one exception, just 3 weeks before trials, but that's a sidebar conversation. And then, I got to trials, and the big test for me was mentally, could I put it all together? Could I put it all together mentally and
Yeah.
just meet that moment where it wasn't the pressure of making the Olympic team. It was the pressure of like, I so wanted to see what I was capable of because I had invested so much and so many people had come along with me in this journey and been there for me that I so badly wanted it. And there's this recognition of like, yeah, it's been 20 years. I don't think the 24 years after my last trial guaranteed to happen.
Yeah, and there's so many different kinds of pressure that sounds like a positive pressure, I mean, to have on yourself as opposed to a more, you know what I'm saying? Like there can be even like a more negative pressure, like all my eggs are in this Olympic basket and I'm going to be devastated if I don't, you know what I mean? It's a
My
different, yeah,
sponsorship, my livelihood depends on
totally.
if I make the team or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to tell us about that sidebar. You can't just mention a sidebar, but without giving the
um,
little bit sidebar.
I mean, and this was an important part of this. So 3 weeks out, we had our final tune-up meet, and this format was a little different where in order to make finals, it wasn't the top 8, which is like the standard top 8 go to finals.
Okay.
All USA Swimming major competitions. But in this meet, they set up where only the top 4 go to finals.
Oh,
And so that requires you to have a really good morning swim. And we knew that, and we're kind of like, this is great practice for trials because we're going to have that really, you're going to have to be on. So this is going to be really good. And I was feeling great in warm up. And again, the meet before had been good. I had no reason to believe that we weren't on, and I was feeling confident. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome. Like maybe I'll get a best time here. And so, but I blew my race strategy, like was way over swam it. So my tempo was too high and I couldn't sustain it and completely died in the first swim, and then kind of overcorrected it. So I didn't make it to finals. So in the morning, didn't make it to finals, and like not a huge thing, but for the ego, that's a little that doesn't build the confidence
yeah.
going into trials. And in the evening, I made some adjustments, but I think overcorrected, and my time was slower than it had been the meet 3 weeks before. Then I had another chance in the 200 breaststroke and didn't make the finals again in that. And this similar thing happened where I just wasn't able to kind of control my pacing of the race. And it was a painful ending. Like I was out ahead, got passed, and did not finish well, and it hurt a lot. So one of the things I think I am able to do as an older athlete is kind of make those changes and kind of control my body and understand why things are important, and adjust. And it rattled me in a way, like, I don't even know what tempo I'm going. I don't know. I'm not aware of my pacing. Like, we've been doing this for however many months, and I don't trust myself going into trials to execute the race strategy that we've been working on, because here I was feeling great, feeling confident, and I wasn't able to do it. And so that's when I really, this time around, I worked with a sports psychologist.
Mm.
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 And had been working with her since February. And thank goodness we had a relationship, and it was, she helped me reframe it and kind of work through feelings. And it brought up feelings of 2004, where 3 weeks, here I was 3 weeks out of trials, and 3 weeks out of trials in 2004, I had the mononucleosis. And here I was, am I doing like subconsciously self-sabotaging for this big thing that I've kind of feels like I've kind of put my life on hold or put a lot of focus on for. And so there was a lot to work through, but good stuff. I think anytime you have to go back and deal with, really look at that hardship and not just bury it, it was helpful again to heal that going into the 2024 trials. And then my coach and I were still wrestling. I kept bringing up to him my concerns about pacing.
Yeah.
And how are we going to get over this? Like, he's like, oh, you're going to be fine. You know how to do it. And I'm like, I'm having serious doubts. Do I need to do a time trial the day before trials to kind of just prove to myself? And then we were talking about this on some Saturday evening, and the next day there was a time trial that some of our swimmers that we coach were going to swim in. He's like, why don't you just do the time trial there? I was like, okay. So I went and did it, and I nailed the pacing, nailed the race plan, and went a personal best. So that actually was my personal best going into trial. So I dropped my time by 0.2 tenths. And so then all the boxes were checked. Like, I'd gotten that personal, like, lifetime best. I saw that I could execute the strategy, and I implemented what the sports psychologist talked about, where it's like, I am just focusing on what's going on the starting blocks to when my hands hit the touchpad. That's all I'm focusing on. And there's going to be a lot of noise, and there's going to be anxiety and nerves, but it's really, for me, going into trials, was about making things smaller, just coming back to like, this is all I have to focus on. So it's drowning out the noise, like the internal noise of my nerves. And
I'm getting them just with you speaking. I know exactly, like, I'm sure the whole
yeah,
audience understands those nerves.
yeah, like making them smaller. And then just that, I mean, I'd never swum in front of so many people. And I'd never swum, I swam at a time before the smartphone and
Oh,
streaming.
right.
And like, I was aware that a lot of people were watching and tuned in live in the moment. And so I had to put in social media. So like, just put that all, I had to find ways to put that away and just come back to, no, this very simple thing. And I don't think I'd ever had the awareness or the tools to be able to do that. And it sounds really simple, but it took effort, and it didn't really click until that time trials 2 weeks before trials.
It doesn't sound simple. That's the hardest part. That's very, very, very hard. You can do all the work, but that's the hardest part. Like, so did she just give you mental exercises to sort of practice, or mantras or that kind of thing to keep you in that headspace?
I think just focusing on the only thing I can control is the race strategy. So just getting clear about the race strategy. And then she had me do this statement of, I know, and I know that such and such about myself, and all these things that I know about my training, and I know about myself as a competitor, and basically it's a bunch of like self-talk and belief. And when things started to get big, and I'd spiral out, I'd just come back to, what do I know? And so, and she was there as a resource for me. Um, and, and another thing that was different this time is like Scott was my coach, but he'd also, I think in 2021, become my boyfriend, and that's it. He had a lot of hats to wear through that process, but there's also this feeling of like we had a partnership, a collaboration, um, and there was like an unconditional support and love there. Like it didn't matter. Like
Yeah.
I was so, with all the people that I worked with, including Scott, like I was just so proud of the work we had done. So we'd already won before we went, and just wanted to have that final icing on the cake.
That's
So
awesome. That's really great. Thank you for sharing all that. As I mentioned to you in our email exchange setting up this podcast, as my inbox was filling with requests and, I was reading your story, it's a funny podcast because it's really not just a masters athlete podcast. This is sort of like a hormonal journey podcast, and I never want to presume that about anybody. Like, I don't want to, when I was in my mid 40s, even though looking back, I'm like, oh, I was going into it. I just didn't know it, knowing what I know now. I never presume that somebody in any age has started feeling the effects of perimenopause or any sort of hormonal disruption. So of course I go lurking, I go onto your IG, and I saw that you had reposted some perimenopause content. So I was like, she's thinking about it. So anyway, so given the nature of our show, I have to ask, like, is that on your radar? Have you started experiencing any of that? Where are you there?
yeah, I don't believe I've started experiencing any of those disruptions. But I'm definitely thinking about it. I'm class of 95 in high school. I know some of my, classmates are struggling with that. And yeah, I want to be prepared and informed going into it.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's
And,
100% fair answer. All
and
of that said, oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
and like I said, I ordered your book
Oh,
immediately when you reached out to me. So I'm like, oh, I am doing a lot of these things already. So that it won't be such a leap for me.
yeah, yeah. And I was just going to ask, like, all of that said, I imagine that your training, nutrition, your mindset, clearly you just talked about that. How has, compare and contrast a little bit about how things have changed over the 20 years and how you are fueling and training yourself?
Yeah. So 20 years ago, when I had my big breakthrough and first made the US Olympic team, um, I went and trained with a coach who he was kind of had a revolutionary approach in the sense that we didn't have to do tons of yardage. It was really like race pace training, a lot of sprint training. But it was enough to do 200, like his swimmers swam all distances. Um, so
So you weren't drowning in volume.
right, exactly. And that psychologically is definitely what I needed at the time, like after however many years of just that pounding yardage. And sprint training is really, really hard. Like it is, you could have a, 2,000-yard workout, and that is much harder to me than just the endless monotonous laps where you're just like, wow, I made it, but you didn't really push yourself. So I went back to, or the kids that we coach, that philosophy is based off of the sprint training. And so, and even the master's program that I swim with at UCLA, under Erica Stebbins, she makes everyone, regardless of age or ability, Friday is sprint day. And I hated it. I hated it so much. Like I hated the feeling of failing at the end of 100 for time, and those repeats of 50s, but she really believes that it's essential for everyone. And so about 3 days a week, we were doing heavy sprint focus or speed endurance. So we're either working pure speed or speed endurance. And then on my recovery days, we were doing weightlifting and that was periodized and really smart. Sometimes working on hypertrophy, but most of the time working on either pure strength or because I don't want to get any bigger or bulkier. Now there's a sign like that's so different to me that you could lift and like just work on pure strength and you don't have to like worry about hypertrophy or
They
I
never
know that's
talked about that before.
no,
Yeah.
no. And then the explosive training is just so fun and relevant. And it's a great way to, I mean, I love the, um, you know, that when you're lifting just for pure strength, like the amount of rest you get, that's kind of fun. That's a new way. That's a new way to do it. And I'm like, yeah, I like jamming out to some good music and getting ready to see what I can do each time. And then the explosive training really like kind of like brings out the athlete in you and is challenging about how to make the most of every single one of those reps. So that was so in the weight room, I think was the biggest change for me compared to how I trained 20 something years ago. The sled, you know, and it was cool to see, like, I don't think I'd ever done weighted. I don't think I'd ever been able to do weighted pull-ups or not more than one or two in college. And this is at swimming at an elite, like we won the national championship one year when I was there. So swimming and training amongst the best. And here I am 46 years old and able to do weighted pull-ups and more pull-ups than I've ever done before. So yeah, I think there was a lot about the weight training that made a difference. And this, of course, what we were doing in the pool, and then nutrition wise, yeah, I was just able to fuel myself so much smarter than in the past. I got some good consultation, worked on gut health, like you talk about in the book. That was kind of key to get under control. My cortisol levels were kind of crazy, so we worked on really controlling what we could control. Is not that much, but sleep is really important. And I knew that, but really trying to emphasize sleep and recovery. Yeah. And then nutrition, timing of when I eat, and like, so trying not to eat late. So I like, if I were coaching on deck, then I would, you know, while the kids are doing their warm up, I've got this canister of food and I'm chowing down, just trying to, you know, get it in then rather than later. And, you know, having those water bottles with the different, you know, with serve different purposes. So yeah, I was amazed at how those things really, really did make a difference. I'd also just in 2022 done some genetic testing with Binding Wellness, and that was really interesting. Helped me realize, oh, some of the stuff I'm eating. Oh, well, first of all, it helped me discover I had a kind of a genetic mutation that might have explained why I struggled with infertility at one point. But that was, my body doesn't process chemicals like folic acid, for instance, in the same way that other people's might. And so I had to, you know, just be extra careful with that, avoid it if possible. And then other things that might be causing inflammation, like I just hadn't thought about that, or I just didn't have the information. But once I knew, I kind of was like, okay, I guess I have to, I had to make the change and just check out labels and eat food a little differently.
So you're prone to inflammation? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I gathered. Like I'd never felt it impairing my
Mm-hmm.
performance ever. You know, and I was revealed that I was lactose intolerant. Again, never felt like I had symptoms, but I made the changes. They were not easy, but doable. And I felt better, and I kind of slimmed out a little bit, avoiding like seed oils. And I don't know if it's just like when you start putting attention, it just like happens,
Right.
but I felt better. I felt better mentally, and I felt better physically.
Were you having gut issues that made you sort of pursue that?
No
Yeah.
issues. Just one of my friends was like worked for the company, and she
Oh.
kind of gave me the spiel, and I was like, okay, I'll check it out.
So you're also, I mean, you span this 20-year span. I don't know swimming per se as well as I do triathlon and cycling, but our sports went through a whole lot of like stuff with no carb, low carb, all the carbs. Like where has your journey with the macros been?
Um, I didn't realize carbs were so important. So they are so, to me, like while I'm weightlifting or swimming, like I've got to have the Vitargo on hand and the electrolytes. I just, and it's funny, like I remember in my teen years, my mom used to make this like it was Exceed was the name of it, but the super sweet drink, and like it was so gross, but that was like pure carb, like that's what they were doing at the time. And then we went away from that. It would just be like you hydrate with water, if that.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I added Vitargo sometime in the fall, that really started. I felt like I get much more out of my workouts, like especially the last 30 minutes or so. And I think there's something psychological about, okay, I'm replenishing these, I guess, glycogen stores.
What is Vitargo? I'm actually
Vitargo, it's Vitargo.
I spelled it
So
right. Is it a drink?
yeah, it's a drink. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Super
And is
sweet.
it a high carb
Yeah. It's a high
drink?
carb drink.
Yeah.
Mhm. So mix that with some electrolytes, and I think that made a big difference. And then, back in the day, we used to talk about carbo loading, and I used to think that was just a fad, but the nutritional consulting I got this time around, yeah, you actually like 3 or 4 days before the competition, enjoy that white bread,
Mm-hmm.
pasta and white rice. So that was a game changer for me, and just that it was okay. It's okay to have the carbs.
Yeah.
And a new thing for me was protein. Like I knew that concept that you needed to have a lot of protein. I didn't realize how hard it would be. Like I really have to think about it, and it's hard to even snack. Like you have to be smart about your snacking too, because if you're actually going to hit that goal, your snacks have to help contribute to that overall protein intake.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's real. The struggle can be real there. It's getting enough. I
Yeah.
feel that.
Yeah. So
Have
those things made a big difference.
has your recovery changed at all, or do you feel like you recover the same way?
Um, I mean, I was over like this 13-month journey. I think I was able to start recovering better, but I also really made that a focus. So
Right.
it's like every day we're gonna map out some modality to pursue so that I'm working on recovery. Um, and I thought for a while that was ice baths, but I don't love that. I don't, yeah. And then I found out like the hot immersion bath could be just for 15 minutes, where it's over 104, could be just as good. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take a 15-minute hot bath in the,
Yeah.
after I'm sitting outside in the freezing cold, or not freezing cold, but it gets
Oh, I
cold.
know. I know what you mean. Yeah. That sounds way better.
Yeah. So, and then massages, I that's kind of old school, but I think really effective. Massage gun. I know you talk about Mark Pro in
Hmm.
your book. There's other things too, rolling out. And
Yeah.
then
All the
like,
things.
yeah. And then the maintenance, and kind of a new thing for me was the PT work of I went in to see her originally because I had an injury, but that ended up being more about like, let's get more out of your body. And so it was kind of this proactive, and if anything came up, we'd address it right away rather than it developing into something.
Yeah, yeah. We've had on Erin Carson a couple times, who I really like. She does PT and mobility work for a lot of famous triathletes, and she's just all about that, like just being able to access your muscles, like, the full access of your muscles, and that's how you stay injury, keep the injuries at
Yeah.
bay. Yeah.
Yeah. Like my glute medials, like I thought they were working fine, doing breaststroke kick, right? You think they're like great. And she's like, yeah, they're not firing at all. So we got them firing.
Good. They
Yeah.
help. So you've been quoted as saying, I want women in particular to not be afraid to be strong, to lift weights, to take care of themselves, and to know that they have a lot more in their older chapters of their lives. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that. Like, because I do too. That's why we're here.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, really enjoyed this era, the 40s. And I think there's something that comes in this midlife chapter where you realize we've been told a lot of nonsense as young girls and young women. And a lot of that has to do with kind of playing small,
Mm,
being small, like being small in our power, but also being small in our physical stature. I mean, we are meant to be, our bodies are built to be strong, but yet it's revered or sought after for it to be another way. And, so I think the cool thing for me about midlife is seeing those stories, seeing how I've bought into those stories, maybe, but seeing it doesn't have to be that way. And we get to write these next chapters for ourselves, like empowered, connected to our own truth, connected to what is real. And I think so much more is possible when we live from that, place. And so weight training to me it's not just about being in a gym and having weights around you. It's about your strength and your inner strength and outer strength. And the thing I love about weightlifting is it forces you to kind of get in a process or growth mindset. Like you can't go inject it. You can't go inject strength. You can't buy it. It is going to force you to kind of be patient with yourself, to get uncomfortable, like not only in the weight room, but after. And it's going to take time. But then something happens where you realize that this big investment that you've made, like shows up on the outside, and it changes how you carry yourself, how you feel about yourself, what you're able to do in your day-to-day life. And I think that's pretty powerful for women to have that experience of their true strength. And so, yeah, I wish that for everyone, just to be in touch with their inner strength, their inner knowing, and their and to have that reflected on the outside.
amen. Beautifully said. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to express? I mean, I think we covered it. That was so well said. Or, what's next for you?
Yeah. Um, I'm still making sense of this whole journey, and it's been such a joy and so eye-opening, kind of heart expanding. I wanted to say thank you to like the crowd in Indianapolis was amazing, and I don't know if the TV coverage quite captured it, but they like seemed to embrace me in a way that I've never been embraced as an athlete. And there's something, I was embraced in a way, like it wasn't about the getting the top time or making the Olympic team, just this recognition and celebration. And to be part of that has been so moving, on what has felt like such a personal journey, but then to have it opened up and shared, and for it to be a source of inspiration has just, I can't put into words what it's meant to me. So still making sense of it. And it's just, I'm so enjoying this. It's hard to stop. Like I thought, okay, we're going to do this 13 months. We're going to go to trials, and that'll be the end. And
Mm.
it's, I'm sure you've wrestled with this yourself. Like how do you bring this to an end when there's so much more exploration and discovery and learning that's happening, and joy. So
So keep
I'm gonna,
exploring. There's no reason you have to stop exploring.
yes. So that was, yeah. And so much of this has been about realizing like the limits that we all place on ourselves, right? And pushing through those. So even though I'm aware of like, oh, that felt great to question the limits we place on ourselves in terms of age and push through that, like I still wanted to limit myself, like, oh, you can only have this 13 months of doing this, and then you have to move on, you know. So still learning. So right now leaning towards still going.
And we will be following. So thank you for joining us, and congratulations again, and really, really wonderful accomplishment inside and out. Like having that change of mindset. I think that's like everything.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show. Come on back next week when we have a little show I'm calling Diaries of a Gen Xer with Just Train menopause fitness trainer and obstacle course athlete Jody Trostler. It is a conversation I am confident that many of you will relate to. So come on back for that one. And until then, as always, stay feisty. You've been listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I'm your host, Celine Yeager. The show is edited and produced by the strong, talented, and amazing women at Live Feisty Media. Follow us on social media at Feisty Menopause, and please help us spread the word. Screenshot and share this episode on your social media channels with the tag @FeistyMenopause. Share the show with your friends, and please subscribe, like, review, and rate this show wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth and good reviews make it easier for other listeners to find. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay feisty.